Some firearms develop a terrible reputation, the old-fashioned way, by letting folks down when it counts. Others get there slower, sabotaged by sloppy design, weak materials, or hype that completely falls apart once you actually fire the thing. So here's the real question. How do you spot these bad actors before they empty your wallet or leave you hanging at the range? In today's breakdown, we're looking at a dozen guns that are best left alone, no matter how eye-catching, rare, or nostalgic they might be. Some of these are collector honey traps. Others just flat out don't work as advertised. We'll go over a bolt gun that wanders like a kid on sugar, a shotgun with a nickname that'll make your stomach turn, and several rifles that look the part but can't walk the walk. This isn't about roasting every oddball antique. We're talking about name brand hardware, military surplus, and even high-end rifles that came up short. Some will just waste your time. Others could cost you more than that. Ruger No. 1 Sporter. The Ruger No. 1 Sporter looks like a dream rifle on paper. It's a single shot with a falling block action that locks up tighter than a vault. And that walnut stock with fine checkering screams. Classic Americana. The varmint model, with its heavier barrel, can shoot tiny groups all day long. But once you get to the lightweight, Sporter configuration, accuracy starts getting squirrely. That slimmer barrel doesn't handle heat well, and the forend is only held by a single screw on a hanger under the barrel. When things warm up, or the stock swells in damp weather, your point of impact starts walking uphill. Some shooters try bedding, others float the forend, or install a Hicks accurizer. But for every hour you spend chasing accuracy with this rifle, you could have been sending rounds downrange with a bolt gun that just works. If you've got the patience to tune and baby your rifle like a show dog, the Ruger No. 1 can be rewarding. But if you just want a no-nonsense hunting rifle, you'll find better out-of-the-box options. Christensen Arms Modern Precision Rifle. On paper, the Christensen Arms Modern Precision Rifle promises everything carbon fiber barrel, folding chassis, premium TriggerTech trigger, and a directional brake that tames recoil without adding weight. It's built for high country hunts and long-range work. Sounds great until you start shooting it hard. After a handful of rounds, that carbon barrel throws up a heat mirage, and your groups start drifting. The polymer feed lips on the factory magazines can cause feeding issues, and the action bedding often needs a lap job just to smooth out cycling. If you call Christensen, be prepared to wait, maybe until the next season rolls around. Plenty of owners ditch the factory mags for steel-accurate mags and baby the barrel like it's made of glass. Even then, you can lose your zero on a warm, humid day. For the same kind of money, a Seekins Havoc Element or a Bergara Divide will give you similar weight and performance without the drama. Mosin Nagant, Model 1891/30. There was a time when every gun store in America had a stack of Mosin Nagants for less than a tank of gas. That old surplus steel lured in a lot of first-time collectors. Sure, the Mosin runs like a tank chambered in 7.6 2x54 rimmed. It'll chew up dirty ammo and shrug off rust. But once you pull the trigger, reality hits hard. That skinny steel butt plate pounds your shoulder like a sledgehammer. The straight stock design makes it hard to anchor properly, and the bolt handle needs a full palm slap just to open it. The trigger is gritty, long, and usually north of 8 pounds. Sights are set for battlefield ranges, not deer in the brush. Yes, you can clean it up, add a Timney trigger, glass bed the action, and slap on a recoil pad. But by the time you do all that, you could have bought a Savage Axis II and been printing sub-minute groups on day one. Winslow Custom Rifles. If someone ever made a rifle just to show off at the country club, it would be a Winslow. Built from the early 1960s through the mid-1990s, these rifles were based on commercial Mauser actions with Douglas barrels, but the real story was the presentation. Glossy bluing you could shave in, hand-cut basket weave checkering on show-grade walnut, and enough gold inlay to rival a rodeo trophy. And sure, they shoot well, but they're not built for dragging through a spruce thicket or up a rock slide. Dressed with a scope and a sling, most of them weigh close to 10 pounds and glint in the sun like a signal mirror. Scratch one of those hand-rubbed stocks, and it'll haunt you worse than a missed bull elk. Top specimens command serious money from collectors, but most owners leave them in the safe or take them to the range once in a blue moon. If you want a dependable field rifle, look toward a Tikka or a Weatherby Vanguard. A Winslow belongs in a display case, not lashed to your pack on a backcountry hunt. Winchester Model 1964 and later Model 94. The original Winchester Model 94 earned its place as the quintessential lightweight lever gun for deer in dense cover. But starting in the year 1964, Winchester's management made some serious compromises. Milled steel components were swapped for cheaper stamped parts. The receiver alloy no longer held a proper blue, and instead turned a strange purple tint. And longtime users noticed that buttery lever throw had turned stiff and gritty. Hunters who once relied on this saddle rifle began reporting sloppy fitment, malfunctioning lifters, and poor wood-to-metal contact. Meanwhile, collectors watched the post-64 values take a nosedive. Later, Winchester tried patching things up with angle eject models and cleaner internal work. But the damage was already baked in. Pick up a pre-64 model, and you'll feel it immediately. The walnut has depth. The lockup feels tank solid, and there's a soul to the build. The later ones? Well, some shoot okay with enough love from a gunsmith. But if you're choosing between two rifles at the same price, one built with craftsmanship, the other built on a budget, it's not a hard decision. Smith & Wesson Model 350. When Smith & Wesson announced the 350 Legend in their heavy-duty X-frame series, folks expected another showstopper. This is the same frame that tames the monster 460 and 500 Magnum rounds, after all. In a rifle-length 20-inch barrel, the 350 Legend launches a 200-grain bullet at roughly 2,100 feet per second. Plenty of energy for medium game in states that require straight-wall cartridges. But cut that barrel down to just 7½ inches in a revolver, and the magic fades fast. Muzzle velocity drops to around 1,550 feet per second, and energy dips under 1,000 foot-pounds. Hardly impressive for a revolver that weighs more than 4 pounds and costs more than a decent used vehicle. Stack it next to a Ruger Super Red Hawk chambered in 454 Casull, and the 350 starts to feel like a novelty act. Sure, reloaders might try to hot rod it, but if you're already tuning loads that hard, why not just start with a proper big bore cartridge? Remington 8.87 Nitro Mag. The Remington 8.87 Nitro Mag was sold as a rugged, no-fail pump-action shotgun for duck blinds and frozen marshes. Its glass-reinforced armor-lock shell was supposed to laugh off corrosion, even in salt water. But that same armor made the receiver bulky, the handling awkward, and the controls cartoonishly oversized. Running the pump sometimes felt like rowing a canoe. Worse still, cold weather condensation often led to stuck shells in the chamber. But the real deal breaker came in the year 2014, when Remington issued a recall. Under certain conditions, the firing pin could jam forward and discharge a round when the action closed. Even beyond that recall window, shooters reported all kinds of trouble: sticky triggers, stubborn loading gates, and short stroking when gloves snagged on the oversized forend. At more than 8 pounds unloaded, this shotgun handles like a cinder block. For less money, a Mossberg 500 offers smoother cycling, more reliability, and way less hassle. The 8.87 ends up feeling more like a movie prop than a working field gun. Winchester Model 100. The Winchester Model 100 looks like a sharp little semi-automatic carbine. At first glance, walnut stock with some tasteful lines, clean profile, and no exposed moving parts. But once you get behind the trigger, the letdown begins. The break is mushy, undefined, and heavier than you'd expect. The wood flexes during recoil, and most rifles never sit solid in the stock unless they've been glass-bedded by a professional. Accuracy is hit or miss and often depends on finding one particular load that the rifle tolerates. But the biggest concern is safety. In 1990, Winchester issued a recall after discovering that the firing pin could seize in the forward position, firing a round before the bolt fully locked. That's a recipe for disaster. While many owners got the replacement pins, plenty of examples on the market today never got serviced. To get the Model 100 running right, you're probably looking at a trigger job few gunsmiths will touch, bedding work, and constant monitoring of the bolt speed. At that point, it's safer and smarter to just move on to something like a Browning bar or a modern Ruger S FAR. Sporterized Arisaka rifles. The Arisaka action, especially the earlier Type 38 and Type 99, is often hailed as one of the strongest bolt-action designs to come out of World War II. After the war, returning American GIs brought them back and tried converting them into budget hunting rifles. Stocks were chopped, barrels cut, scopes mounted, and original calibers were often replaced with mixed results. These sporterized Arisakas now show up at pawn shops and gun shows, but buying one is always a roll of the dice. Some were built from so-called last-ditch production guns, made hastily during Japan's final war months. These versions are often poorly heat-treated and questionably safe to shoot. The massive safety disc at the back of the bolt was never user-friendly, and many are worn smooth today, risking slippage under recoil. Ammunition like 6.5 Arisaka or 7.7 Japanese is both hard to find and expensive. Reloaders often resort to resizing other brass, which can push pressures into dangerous territory if not done carefully. Before pulling the trigger on one of these relics, a gunsmith should inspect headspace, bolt lug engagement, and overall safety, and that can cost more than the rifle itself. Unless you're a dedicated collector of wartime firearms, these sporter jobs are better left on the wall than in the woods. Pre-X Mark Pro Remington 700. For decades, the Remington Model 700 stood tall as the gold standard of American bolt-action rifles. Whether in the hands of military snipers, long-range competitors, or whitetail hunters in the Appalachians, this rifle earned its keep. Its clean profile, smooth bolt, and seemingly endless aftermarket made it a go-to choice for shooters coast to coast. But buried under all that praise was a flaw that went unnoticed by many: the original Walker trigger system. Under certain conditions, pulling the bolt release or even flipping the safety off could unintentionally release the sear, discharging a round without the trigger being touched. Lawsuits, investigations, and reports mounted over the years. Remington stood by the system until mounting pressure led to a recall. A newer variant with a stamped V marking was introduced, but by then, the damage was done. A large number of rifles remain in circulation with the original design, untouched and unfixed. If you're shopping for a used 700 made before the year 2007, inspect the trigger assembly immediately. Better yet, replace it with an aftermarket unit from Trigger Tech or Timney. You'll get a cleaner break, safer function, and likely a tighter group on paper. The Walker trigger may be part of the 700 story, but it's the chapter most owners are better off skipping. Century Arms C39 Version 2. Ask any Kalashnikov purist what makes the design so battle-worthy, and they'll tell you hammer-forged internals, generous tolerances, and rugged parts built to shrug off abuse. Century Arms C39 Version 2 ignored all of that and went with a fully cast bolt and receiver metal poured into molds rather than shaped by forging. It saved money, sure, but casting often traps air pockets, and weakens structural integrity. The result? Hairline cracks around locking lugs, stress fractures in the trunnion area, and deformation that showed up before the rifle ever saw its first 1,000 rounds. Some examples split around the chamber after just a few trips to the range. The wood furniture felt rough, almost like crate lumber shaped by a belt sander, and the finish was so thin it flaked under the safety lever by day 2. For a platform praised for its durability, the C39 version 2 fell flat fast. For the same money, you could pick up a Romanian WASR or a Serbian Zastava, both of which offer cold hammer forged barrels, chrome-lined chambers, and proven reliability from actual military contracts. In short, if you want an ache that holds up like the originals, this isn't it. Winchester Model 1911 SL Widowmaker. And now, for one of the most infamous shotguns ever designed, the Winchester Model 1911 Self-Loading, better known by its deadly nickname, the Widowmaker. Back in the early 20th century, John Browning's Auto 5 was cleaning up the self-loading shotgun market. Winchester didn't want to pay royalties, so they rushed out their own design. But due to patent limitations, they couldn't use Browning's top-mounted charging handle. Instead, they devised a push-to-charge system, where the shooter had to pull the barrel backward to cycle the action. That's right, no charging handle. To chamber a round, users often braced the stock on the ground, leaned over the muzzle, and shoved the barrel rearward if the firing pin was stuck forward or a round had slipped onto the lifter. This could, and did, cause the shotgun to fire point blank into the shooter's face or chest. Newspaper reports from the era described fatal accidents, and the Widowmaker label wasn't a joke, it was a grim warning. Add in fast, wearing fiber buffers, brutal recoil, fragile wooden stocks, and jamming issues from swollen paper shells. And you have a shotgun that was both hazardous and frustrating. Fewer than 100,000 were made before Winchester quietly retired the model. These days, they pop up in closets and estate sales, often misunderstood by modern owners. If you find one, appreciate it for its strange place in firearms history, but never load it. Disable the firing pin and hang it on the wall. This is one relic that should stay behind glass. And there you have it, 12 firearms that built their reputations, not on online gossip, but on real-world failures, dangerous designs, and mechanical missteps that couldn't be ignored. Some are cautionary tales. Others are reminders that even legendary brands sometimes miss the mark. And a few? They're just plain dangerous if you don't know what you're dealing with. Have you ever owned one of these infamous guns? Did yours outperform the horror stories or confirm them? Or maybe you walked away before things got expensive, or worse. Let us know your experience in the comments. Don't forget to hit like, share this with your fellow shooters, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you don't miss the next straight shooting breakdown. We've got more no-nonsense firearm reviews coming soon.